acquittal, and the third one was grant of demurrer to evidence. Now, the acquittal, the second case, ang alam ko po, ay inappeal pa ng Office of the Solicitor General to the Court of Appeals, which is clearly violative of the principle against double jeopardy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So just note po, no, given the credibility for witness, and it's very important to note that the first and third were dismissed by virtue of a filed demurrer to evidence, which means that the prosecution did not have evidence to the point that the defense no longer needed to present their own. So, Mr. Chair, moving forward, just a quick question now that we're going to the meat, and I think we understand the former senator attended one of our hearings prior under the Committee on Ethics, Human Rights. However, at the time, wala pa po yung revelation ni Colonel Garma. So I think it really changes everything now that we have the revelations of Colonel Garma and the corroborative evidence that somehow the so-called Davao template was sought to be replicated in nationwide scale. We'd just like to ask, given we were lucky, you have our research person here comes today wearing multiple hats. She was the commissioner of the CHR, which the task actually is to be a counter-check to our authorities. At the same time, she served as part of the structure of the authorities when she was Secretary of the Justice. And finally, while she was part of the Legislative and the Senate, she actually filed an inquiry on EJK. So given your extensive knowledge of this, and that you've had a background from the local up to the point, and even chronologically up to the point in time in which supposedly there was already that progression from local to national, could you please educate us? Because one thing that I think that we have to be concerned with is the so-called labeling of the war on drugs versus the EJK, extrajudicial killing. Because po, as we understand, based on the testimony of Colonel Garma, yung war on drugs po is under the auspices of authority. It is being conducted under the organization of the Philippine National Police, supposedly. Whether these elements of the PNP were working within or outside of the authority of the PNP, that doesn't escape the fact that it's more aligned to the state-sponsored element. However, when we talk about the EJK, and specifically in your inquiry on the DDS, we're talking more of the vigilante killings. And I believe last time there was a presentation, I believe it was Attorney Conti. May we ask you very quickly to Attorney Conti, Mr. Chair, I understand in your presentation last time there was a distinct point in time in which the war on drugs transitioned from vigilante killings onto state-sponsored police operations. Can you please elucidate on that once again?
Yes, according to the data, the information from media reports, in the first 3 to 6 months of the war on drugs, it started with vigilante killings, and then eventually it transitioned to police perpetrated killings. So dito na po nagsimula bandang 2017 yung talagang police operations, whether by bust, arrest warrants, or search warrants.
Thank you, Attorney Conti. Mr. Chair, so back to the former Senator de Lima. In your investigation of the so-called DTS, were you also investigating the police sponsor, the state side aspect of the war on drugs, or was this purely on the vigilante?
It also included the police side, the PNP, the official, because of the HCIS, the Heinous Crimes Investigation Section. That was part of the official organizational structure of the DCPO, then the Davao City Police Office. So yung mga naging member, especially the original members of that Heinous Crimes Investigation Section, were actually the DDS members, as testified on or attested to by, especially by Arturo Las Cañas. So it's not just the killings by the riding in tandem, the unknown assassins, but precisely the structure which points to the fact that these are headed, especially the handlers, by policemen under the DCPO. Yan po ang pagkakatanda ko dun sa mga nakuha naming impormasyon. So already covered.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the former senator has now confirmed, aside from the Vigilante killings, the riding in tandem, and the Sinaloa-style killings, according to Attorney Conti, there were also police operations involved. Can you confirm for us, through the chairman, of course, the operational aspect of the police? This would include yung mga nanlaban in legitimate police operations and buy-bust operations. Was this something that was investigated in the locality of Davao during your time as CHR?
Yeah, some aspect of it, because nga of the organizational structure. Because indeed, policemen were handling the operations. Yung mga sinabi ko pong, excuse me, yung mga sinabi ko pong pangalan, SPO4 Sanson Benaventura as the Logistics Finance and Death Clearance Officer, SPO3 Arturo Las Cañas as overall team leader for operations and planning, sila SPO4 Bienvenido Laud as team handler, SPO3 Jim Tan as team handler. They were then, as far as I know, as far as I could recall from the records, they were then active police officers, but assigned to this HCIS, or Heinous Crimes Investigation Section, in charge of those killings.
Mr. Chair, thank you for the clarification. However, I think most respectfully, we have to clarify po, their being members of the PNP should be distinguished from the operations being undertaken by the PNP. Because while we have confirmed, based on your testimony, that they are confirmed to be active members of the uniformed personnel, but if the way that the EJK was conducted was solely limited to the vigilante side, we're talking about Sinaloa killings, abduction, riding in tandem, extrajudicial, this would be different from the state, the police operation side. Because what we've seen based on the operations, they come in two forms. You have, usually when we're talking about the HVT, the high value target, this would rely on vigilante killings that we would see and have seen based on testimony also of Colonel Garma. But we also have to consider that for the supposedly legitimate operations in which later on there is supposedly allegedly planting of evidence, nanlaban, drug bust or buy bust, which has gone wrong. I think this would be considered as under the auspices of a legitimate police operation. Now, my question to the former senator, to the honorable chairman, is that was this part of the so-called DDS operations in the locality? Because what I'm talking about here, what we're basing on, the testimony of Colonel Garma is talking about the nationwide scale, and we've seen it. The testimony of Attorney Conti, we're talking nationwide, we've seen both vigilante and police operations. My question now is, at least for the investigation of the DDS in Davao, did this involve, because I understand there's the HCIS and that they were active members of the police force, but did they employ buy-bust operations and nanlaban to perpetrate this so-called war on drugs?
To answer your question, Your Honor, I have to point out that the nanlaban concept actually originated in Davao and invented by the DDS. So it's not something new. There may be fewer cases then, kasi karamihan nga is the riding in tandem, mga vigilante killings as induced by then Mayor Rodrigo Duterte. But there were also specific cases na ganon, because the nanlaban concept actually originated from the DDS operations.
Thank you for that confirmation. So although it might have been a few, it's not novel. There was a nanlaban and there was supposedly legitimate police operations conducted in the locality.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Chair, one more question on that. Given that the transition from the local to the national, from the local it was talking about barangay to LGU level, city. Of course, it would take a lot of expanding for it to go into the national level. And we've had through the PNP yung, now we're talking about yung double barrel, Oplan double barrel. You have the Tokhang and then the high-value targets. Was this something that you also saw being conducted in Davao at the time that you were conducting your investigation to the DDS? Or was this purely mostly skewed towards the vigilante side?
Okay, the Oplan Tokhang and then later the Oplan double barrel, they became more pronounced, and as they became official operations because of that PNP circular. No, I don't remember any evidence or any document or any information that there is such an official operations plan that could be similar to the Oplan Tokhang or Oplan double barrel. But, as I said earlier, meron din mga nanlaban operations. So, these are actually implemented by certain police officers in Davao. So I would not know how they call them, but I'm sure there are really such plans. Kasi nga, doon sa organizational structure, again,